Andy, you reported that the Mets were discussing trading Mark Vientos. Were the Mets
Mhm.
getting serious calls about Vientos, and why did they decide to keep him?
Well, they definitely were in discussions with multiple clubs about Vientos. They felt like I think I was the first one. I'm not trying to take a victory lap on something like this. I'm making a point here. The first one to write that they were open to trading Vientos, and then Vientos hit the grand slam that night in San Diego. So it's not like the Mets thought that was my grand slam, but I think I had something to do with it because they think that he's a good player when he's motivated, and he thinks that they think he's a good player anyway. But there's something about when he plays with a chip on his shoulder that seems to work for him. It sort of worked either way, like talking about him, which they were, versus keeping him for now and letting him feel a little bit like he has to prove himself. That different things motivate different people. He doesn't need motivate. He's a really like high makeup player, a good guy. They like him, but sometimes people just that had that extra edge can help them. I'm not saying that's why they didn't trade him, but they didn't trade him because he still brings something to the table. He's been hotter lately. He's been contributing more lately. Robert didn't turn out to be available potentially, so that's a big reason probably why Vientos trades didn't end up going anywhere. And I'm certainly I understand that they will revisit the idea of trading him this offseason.
Okay. I do like the victory lap though, Andy. I think that was warranted.
I have one Major League Grand Slam now. That was mine.
Valid. I love that for you. Guys, as of now, they've seemed to escape this trade deadline without giving up any of their top prospects, but also their young talent in the big leagues. Andy, you mentioned earlier the Mets may be interested in trading Vientos in the offseason. Does the club view him as the odd man out in the Baty, Mauricio, Vientos trio?
Yeah, at the moment, I would say if there is an odd man out, because David Stearns likes athleticism and defensive versatility, and he's the least defensively versatile of those players. I would argue that he's also with the caveat that Mauricio might turn into this. Right now, Vientos is the one guy that can get hot enough to really carry a team. We've seen he's hit 27 home runs in the major leagues and then dominated in the playoffs already. Baty's ceiling is obviously not as high, but he's giving you more right now with versatility, and he's hitting better. And Mauricio has so much potential. Some concerns about swing decisions and chasing that we'll see how that shakes out over the next year or two. But right now, yeah, Vientos, even though I don't know that he'd be my odd man out, he is theirs at the moment. But there's time. You go ahead and dominate another postseason like you did last year. Maybe it becomes harder to trade the guy. And I will say, too, that another important element of this is the Mets do not have a first baseman under team control for next year currently. And one of the arguments for holding on to Vientos has always been, we might need a first base. We might need him to play first base next year. So that's a consideration, too, that they'll carry into the offseason.
Yeah, Mauricio has incredible upside, but just like you just mentioned, Andy, I wonder if how Vientos performs in the postseason will impact how the Mets kind of feel about him going into the offseason and if they do choose to bring him back. Zach, how do you balance wanting to get your young guys, especially in the minor leagues, playing time when there's just not enough space in the lineup? How do you balance that?
Well, I think, it depends on how you feel about those guys long term. Like what the decisions that you make about how you're going to utilize them at the major league level versus getting them every day at bats, the minors. It depends on what you see them as. So if you see, Acuna, for example, as a player who's really going to kind of could bounce around, run off the bench, be some depth, can play in a pinch or when there's an injury, then maybe you're fine with him staying in the big leagues because he can provide that potentially now. Versus a player that you think has more upside to be an everyday guy. So let's say that was a Vientos in the past, but that you maybe wanted that guy to play more when, because there was times I remember the last couple of years where people wanted to see him playing the big leagues. And it's like, well, if he's not going to play every day, you might have a better chance of tapping into his upside if he plays every day in the minors. So, and then there's the other thing of it's really hard for anyone, veterans, it's hard for them to not play every day. It's hard to get in a rhythm, hard to have a routine. So that's hard for anyone when you already have young players trying to make the adjustment to the big leagues. I'm not sure it's ideal for them to be doing it. only playing a few times a week. Although you could make the case, well, you could put them in the most favorable matchups to probably set them up to succeed. So if you have a right-handed hitter, maybe he's facing lefties, and so that gives him a better chance to succeed. But it's hard when you're trying to win and you're trying to integrate young players. I think that's one of the hardest things to do in baseball, and we've seen it. And, the Mets over these last couple of years, they've had guys who, when I was there, they were top prospects, and now they're big league players, and some of them didn't pan out the way we expected, and they're running out of time because they're out of options. And you have like 3-4 guys like that you got to make decisions on. Are they going to even be on our roster next year? So I'm sure that drives part of their decision making, is that those guys are running out of flexibility.
Yeah. Also, I guess too, when you want these young guys to try to start building some consistency when they're not in the lineup as much as you might want them to be, or as much as they might want to be, that can be tough. So definitely a hard decision that I'm glad I don't make.